Hi everyone, welcome to the show. So we have Nicolas, Dorier, and Kukks on for an episode about BTC Pay Server. I've got my BTC Pay Server shirt on, so welcome everyone. I am just firstly going to introduce the sponsors of this show. Yeah. Okay, so firstly, we have Kraken, one of the world's leading Bitcoin exchanges. They're also one of the longest standing Bitcoin exchanges. They've got a lot of liquidity. They've got really high volume, and they also offer some of the lowest fees out there available. So this is where you can go to sign up for that. And Kraken also have a Kraken Pro mobile app, which is also for iPhone and Android. So it's got a beautiful mobile first design. So go and check that out. Kraken also offer Crypto Watch, which is cryptowat.ch. And on that site, you can see it's a charting and trading terminal. And essentially, you can drive the interface for different exchanges through that also. So go and check them out there. Next, I've got a new sponsor. They are CoinFloor. So they're one of the UK exchanges. Their website is coinfloor.co.uk, and they're offering auto buy. So just like other companies, they've got dollar cost averaging or auto buy. And so this is a fantastic feature that I'm really excited about. And the cool thing with CoinFloor is that they are Bitcoin only as well. So if you're in the UK or you've got friends who are new coiners or pre-coiners, send them to coinfloor.co.uk. And additionally, they've got an affiliate campaign coming soon. So you can earn Bitcoin by referring new or existing customers into CoinFloor. So they've also done some work around making it really easy to sign up. Next up is Swan Bitcoin. So I'm an advisor and I hold a small equity stake in Swan Bitcoin, but Swan Bitcoin is where you go if you are in the US and you want to sign up to stack Bitcoins in an automated way using your connected up ACH connection with your bank account. And so then you can stack Bitcoins regularly with every paycheck, and they have the cheapest dollar cost averaging fee in the US. So you've got to check them out. Have a look. I've done some episodes with Corey Clipston and with Jan Pritzker from the team as well. And they've got to focus on education as well. They're really trying to teach people how to hold their own keys and take self-custody. Lastly, but not least, is Unchained Capital, Bitcoin Financial Services. So Unchained Capital offer a vault service. You can get a 2 of 3 multi-signature vault, and you can store your Bitcoins and separate your keys geographically. And so that's the vault product. And then on the other side, they've got the loans product. So you can put up some Bitcoin and then get USD as liquidity. And you still hold 1 out of the 3 keys in that scenario. So that's a great setup for you also. And Unchained Capital, as we've got their website open right now, you can see on their blog, they've got incredible content such as Gradually Then Suddenly by Parker Lewis. They've also got open source content or open source material rather, such as Caravan, which is an open source multi-sig coordinator. So go and check them out. So that is our sponsors for the show. And so today, I think most of my listeners are well aware of Nicolas and Kukks, who are past guests on the show. But just for those of you who are a little newer, you don't know who they are. Nicolas Dorier works at DG Lab in Tokyo, and he is the creator of BTC Pay Server, which is a Bitcoin full node, and it's basically like a stack. It's a full stack that you can use as your payment processor alongside other things as well. And Kukks, also a past guest on the show, he's a big contributor to BTC Pay, and he is also sponsored by Btc, one of the Bitcoin exchanges. So welcome, guys.
Hey.
So guys, I know you've done a lot of work recently. There's been big updates on BTC Pay, and we've got pay to endpoint coming into BTC Pay and a range of other things as well. But first, let's just start with you, Nicolas. Tell us a little bit about what's come in this recent update, and perhaps why you were looking into pay to endpoint.
Yeah, so pay to endpoint actually it's for Kukks that got the initial idea. So maybe I should defer to him about this. But yeah, basically in the last test release, there's been lots of works going. So there was a page on port that I will let Kukks go because it's the one that developed the first implementation and then decided to put it in there. And there is also all the website redesign that so there is many people that worked on it. Actually, I cannot cite all of them because ev- um, even on my side, actually, I didn't contribute too much on the design. But yeah, there is a new checkout page. There is a new homepage. So lots of UX improvements. So then yeah, the dark mode, like scroll a little bit. I don't remember. Yeah, the checkout design. So basically, it's like a long-term goal in BTC Pay these days as well is like to try to unify all the different design. We have different websites everywhere, so we try to unify all the color, all the design everywhere. So that was part of this. And,
Excellent. And go on.
Yeah, so there is
Yeah.
also like lots of improvement on the wallet. So I will let Kukks go because actually it's him as well that developed on the new wallet improvement as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Kukks, do you want to tell us a bit about some of your work on that?
Yeah, so back like midway through last year, Blockstream contacted me to add liquid support on BTC Pay, and to add support for that, I needed to add we needed to add a feature called the hot wallet feature, so that they could set up a liquid node and liquid wallets with it. And I think it was in November or December, the whole idea about pay join and pay to endpoint started pumping again. So I think in November I was looking at it at one point, just a brief overview of what's available in the market and what specifications have been made around it. So I started looking into it, and with the addition of the hot wallet system, Nicolas pointed out that it should be quite straightforward to actually start working on doing pay join. At least it became possible to do it. And Blockstream contacted me, and they said they wanted to get the idea moving forward to add it into BTC Pay, and that they would sponsor me to work on it. So that was a good kick, at least, to get it started. So the work started in around January. So yeah.
Fantastic. And so, look, let's start talking a little bit about the BTC Pay Server pay join. So I'm just, for the audio listeners, I've got on the screen pay join implementation notes. So Kukks, can you just talk us through a little bit around what was the scene existing in terms of pay join at the time, and what was, what's the idea with BTC Pay, and what path did you go down?
Yeah, so I looked at what's available, what was available in, I think, November, October last year, and there was, I think there was two or three implementations. There's the stowaway from Samurai. There's the pay join from Join Market, and then there was a Btc, but I think it went. I don't think it was live anymore for a while. But Btc had a BIP with the specifications for it, so that was a good starting point, at least. I started off by pretty much implementing BIP 79 Btc, and reading through the feedback of Adam Gibson and a few other people, which was basically add PSBT support and some other features here and there. And I pretty much agreed with most of them, so I went that route. I think it took maybe a month or two to do that, and afterwards Nicolas started reviewing it, and he did some small changes. So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about then differences and what's going into this. So actually, first off, maybe we should just clarify, just for listeners who are unaware, a pay join is a transaction where you are, so if you're used to doing Bitcoin transactions where you just scan and pay, that's just like a standard send to the receiver. But with a pay join transaction, you're actually coordinating that back and forward with the merchant or with the other party. So perhaps Kukks, you could tell us a little bit about how does that collaboration work in pay to endpoint with BTC Pay?
Yeah, so it's actually two. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a little thing that these days I'm writing a proper Bitcoin implementation proposal. So I will just share the link in the private chat so you can show it, because there is
Sure.
there is a nice graph that explains a high-level view of the protocol. So I sent you in the private chat.
Yep. 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one, yeah. Okay, you can go ahead, Kukks. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the PayJoin implementation in BTC Pay is actually quite simple in terms of collaboration. It's literally, I think it's just one HTTP request from the sender to a receiver. So there's two parties in this always, a sender and the receiver. In our implementation, the receiver is a merchant who has an always on server, so it's quite simple for the sender to communicate with the receiver. So the sender just sends the receiver creates a payment invoice, which is a BIP21 payment request. So it's Bitcoin, address, and then some additional parameters. We just added a flag there, similar to how BTCPay does it, but we changed it from BTCPay to PayJoin. And as soon as the sender sees it, he just notices that there's PayJoin support, and if they support PayJoin, they send the transaction that they wanted to do to the server, to the merchant, instead of just sending it on the Bitcoin network. And the receiver, if they can do something with it, or if they can provide a PayJoin transaction or proposal, they'll send it back to the sender, and they can sign it again and do it on the Bitcoin network. And it's really just one HTTP request to the receiver.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And so in terms of some of the parts that go into it, we have PSBT as well. So that's partially signed Bitcoin transactions. So for listeners who are unfamiliar and you want some more detail, go back and see episode 99 with Andrew Chow, the creator of PSBT. But maybe just a simple way to think of it is your Bitcoin wallet is sort of proposing certain transactions, and it has to sign them, and then the other side has to take that and then also sign with its own inputs. Would you guys agree that's basically like a kind of a high level summary of what's going on there?
Yeah. So basically, for imagine that you want several people to sign the same transaction. What would happen before is that somebody take the transaction in bytes and give it to somebody else to contribute to it. But the problem is that in a transaction in byte, there is lots of missing informations, where if you give it to the other person, there is lots of work for them to do to add their own signature on top of it. So basically, like PSBT is like a new standard of a way to represent the transaction with all the data that is needed for the signer. So it's easier for each party to verify it and then to sign it. And it has been a huge contribution to Bitcoin. It's not a consensus layer change. It's not a peer-to-peer layer change, but it definitely changed the game. Yeah.
Right. It's also used in other things like, say, it could be used in multi-signature, or where you have, say, a hardware wallet and you want to be able to use the software on your computer to communicate with the software, with that hardware wallet. And so that's where PSBT is a useful standard, or wallet interchange format, I think is like the technical term for it. And so let's talk a little bit about the process of putting this into BTC Pay. So maybe you just want to tell us a little bit about what had to change in BTC Pay to make PayJoin work with it, Kukks?
Yeah, well, I mean, not that much, honestly, since we already have PSBT support like all across in there. We support sending, so we have a full featured wallet in there, so that you can send your money through BTC Pay without using another software. We added hot wallet supports a few versions back, so now we could also automate sending money, and you can also sign transactions on demand. So in terms of that, it wasn't too bad. We already generated BIP21 payment requests, and we already had a checkout page where you can do a collaboration and show the QR code to the client, to the customer.
Yeah.
So in terms of BTC Pay, not much change. We just added a little bit more code.
Yeah.
Basically the endpoint where the sender has to connect to collaborate on the pay join.
Yep.
I
Can you
don't
tell
know.
us a little bit about BIP21, the payment link?
Yeah, so BIP21 is quite an old standard at this point. I think it's from 2012 or something, or maybe even older. It's basically a way to say that you want to pay in Bitcoin to this specific address, this specific amount, and then some additional data. So you can add like a label or a message, or in our case, we added a PJ flag, so pay join, and you tell it where to connect to actually do the collaboration.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite a widely used standard, so it felt good it felt natural to just go for that.
Yep, yep. And let's talk through, I think it might be, I've got the PayJoin guide. So let me just pull that up. So here, this is how you actually do it. So for those of you who have BTC Pay, or if you're just trying to figure out how that works, you have to enable it. So Nicolas, do you want to just talk us through a little bit about the process around how you do it?
Yeah, I just want to add something about the change in BTC Pay that we needed. Actually, so to make it work for the first version, it was quite simple, as Kukks said, but there was some adjustment that we needed to do. Actually, very often what happened when we add feature on BTC Pay, we start running into stuff that before were edge cases that we didn't care. And one of the edge cases was in BTC Pay. So when you pay an invoice on BTC Pay, actually people can do a replacement, RBF replacement. So imagine that you send a transaction to the merchant, there is not enough fees. You can bump the transaction to increase the fees. So normally it was supporting this, but it turns out that there was a bug. And the second transaction were like increasing the fees of the invoice. So this kind of problem, basically, when we implemented PayJoin, like it starts surfacing again, and like we needed to clean that up. And because also it's a privacy feature, Adam Gibson pointed out lots of how can I say fingerprints of BTC Pay's transactions. So for example, we were not properly setting up the sequence of the input of the transaction, very specific details, but that can show off on the blockchain, that can leak some privacy on the blockchain. So this kind of stuff needed to be fixed as well.
Right.
But yeah, other than this, it was not too much to change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll absolutely get into some of the fingerprinting and some of those privacy components. But I think it would be good to just walk through, just for listeners who maybe they haven't used BTC Pay before. Let's talk through some of that process. Did you want to talk through some of that?
Yeah. So first thing to know is that in PayJoin, you cannot use PayJoin if your store is tied to a hardware wallet. So in BTC Pay, when you create a new store, you can say, okay, all the money go to my hardware wallets. You can do this. However, if you do that, you cannot use PayJoin, because in PayJoin, there is this collaboration between the sender and the receiver needs the ability to sign a new transaction, a new PayJoin transaction automatically. So it means that when you create a store on BTC Pay, you need to create your store, go to derivation scheme, and say, I want to create a new hot wallet. So it's what you see here. Then once you are created the hot wallet things, you can just, so yeah, you can scroll. So it's kind of normal setup. And once you created it, there is a checkbox here, yeah, that you can check on your store, say, okay, I want to enable PayJoin.
Excellent.
I'm starting to think maybe in next release or so, maybe we will put that on automatically, but I'm not really sure, because it's I wish to enable this PayJoin automatically, but I don't know if it's a good idea, because still, like, it's a hot wallet. So we don't want to sign something without the explicit permissions of the merchant. So we might need to do something UX-wise to make that easier. But yeah,
Yeah,
and
or
basically
maybe it's
that's
like
it.
two separate wallets that are there. So they would put in their hardware wallet one, and then have another one that's just the PayJoin one, all part of the same store kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. So right now you cannot do this. Right now it's like one store, one wallet. But it's our goal later to be able to have several wallets for one store. I'm not quite clear how to do that yet, but after I will explain why it's important as well for the fingerprinting aspect. And
Sure.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yep. And then let's talk about paying.
Actually,
Yep, go on.
you also need one more thing. So for PayJoin to works, you need some coins, some UTXO on your wallet. So you need to send yourself some money so that those UTXO can be used with a PayJoin with somebody else. Yeah.
Right. And Kukks, did you want to tell us about the process for doing a PayJoin? So let's say I've got a BTC Pay and I want to pay into another BTC Pay to do a PayJoin.
Yeah, it should be fairly straightforward, actually. It's as if you're not doing a PayJoin. It's so you get the payment link from the invoice from BTC Pay. You go on your on the send wallet screen of the BTC Pay for your wallet. You click the paste BIP21, and you just give it the payment link, and it'll just populate all the data in there to pay the address and the amount, and it'll also add a PayJoin URL inside the advanced settings. And as soon as you sign, it'll just tell you that it's you can do a PayJoin, or it can try to do a PayJoin, or you can just skip PayJoin altogether. And once you click that button, which is broadcast PayJoin, it'll try to negotiate a PayJoin transaction and send it over the network. So
fantastic. So I guess just to summarize, so for listeners, if you're used to using a BTC Pay or paying into a merchant who has BTC Pay, in the copy tab at the bottom, there'll be that little PayJoin link. So basically you copy that and then you paste that into your own BTC Pay wallet, or now there'll be support with other wallets as well, correct? So as I understand, Blue Wallet are looking at it. Blockstream Green, obviously they sponsored some of this work, so they're going to get it into Blockstream Green. I think Wasabi are looking at it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that process there of the collaboration to make that happen?
yeah, and one more thing as well. It's not just a payment link as well. You can also use the QR code, which is what you always scan anyway nowadays if you're on a phone. But yeah, in terms of collaboration, there's Wasabi, I think Join Markets, Green Wallets, Blue Wallets.
There is also a Node.js implementation that are in the work.
Yeah, that's the one that's being worked on for Blue Wallet. So, but it works for both of them. So it's just a library, separate library being worked on by Jonathan Underwood from Bitbank and Luke Childs. I started trying to mess around with the Blue Wallet implementation just to add it as a prototype, and I talked to some of the guys from Blue Wallet about it, and they seemed keen on it, and they created some wireframes and UX. So I thought that was a good start to kind of just try tinkering with it a bit. And then I asked Jonathan Underwood and Luke Childs for some help because they're more experienced with the Node.js and JavaScript libraries. So with the Bitcoin JS based JavaScript libraries. So yeah, and they kind of did a lot more work than me at this point on it. So it's all up to them. They're pretty much doing all the work so far.
Excellent.
And that's on the Blue Wallet side. And basically, if you have an open source or a JavaScript based wallet, now you can use that library and just implement PayJoin as well. And then in terms of Wasabi, I did a very preliminary pull request there, and then Lucas Ontivero grabbed it. I don't think he even grabbed it. I think he redid the whole thing and added, pretty much ported the logic from BTC Pay himself. And since it's in C#, Wasabi is in C#, it kind of works out pretty well, I guess, for them. Yeah.
Excellent. And so let's talk a little bit about what merchants should think about, right, when they're using this PayJoin, because now they're thinking, in the past, they might have had the cold wallet with, let's say their Trezor or Ledger or Cold Card, right? They take the XPub and put that into BTC Pay. So now they're thinking more like, okay, I've got this continually, I'm receiving Bitcoins, but it's now on my hot wallet, which I could have that on, say, the Luna node VPS, or I might have it in some device. What are the considerations there for the merchants?
Yeah, so activating hot wallet definitely like raise the risk of attacks. So for the merchant that I know, in general anyway, they are like kind of sometimes selling Bitcoin at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, they have all their receipt. They just do a transfer to the exchange and sell it. So for those people, it doesn't risk that much in the sense that anyway, the money they have on this wallet is always very small. And for people where it's more problematic, so one feature in BTCPay I want to add for wallets that are hot wallets is automatic transfer. So the idea will be later that you can create your hot wallets and you can say to your hot wallet, okay, if it goes above a certain limit, then do a transaction that send that all on the hardware wallet. So this will decrease the maximum amount of money that you can lose. So yeah, we plan to work on this.
Awesome. And Kukks, did you want to tell us a little bit about Transmuter and whether that might be something you're looking at as well? Although I understand that is in an early stage, right?
Yeah, so the feature that Nicolas explained is kind of available right now in a plugin sort of way. So we have BTC Transmuter, which is in alpha, at least kind of alpha. It lets you basically create hot wallets in there as well. We've had that in there for a long time, and you can tell it to forward funds from one wallet to another. So at least you can kind of mitigate the risk right now by configuring BTC Transmuter and telling it to transfer funds from the PayJoin hot wallet to your hardware wallet in every X amount of time, or when the balance reaches a certain amount, or if you have any other criteria. So at least you can kind of mitigate it through that for now. You can do plenty of other things. Right now we also recommend it for when you do email receipts and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so I guess for listeners who might not be as familiar, if you've ever used something like if this, then that, it's kind of like you can set up certain rules or recipes in the transmuter, and then it will then automatically execute those. And so, like you're saying, you can set up a hardware wallet and periodically flush out the balance from that. But I suppose if we are thinking about from a privacy perspective, right, that merchant also has to start thinking about, well, do I need to do coin joins on the way out, right? So I'm doing pay joins with my customer. Let's say I'm a merchant. Then that's periodically accumulating. But then I've got to, depending on again who I'm trying to be private from, I might need to do coin joins before sending that out. So that's another thing to think about as well, right?
Yeah. So that's an interesting point where. If you want to coin join before sending to your hot wallet, actually there is the way we design the protocol is very flexible for what the receiver can do. Actually, so the receiver has lots of flexibility to create a pay join transaction, and one of the possibilities he can do is bundle his own payments inside the pay join transactions. So which means that actually like the process of sending money to her hardware wallet don't have to be in a different transaction. It can be just a customer that paid. So the customer tried to pay, you create a pay join with him, but inside the pay join at the same time you send all your UTXO to a hardware wallet. And so in one transaction, basically you get the customer that pay you and you that send to, I don't know, an exchange or like or to your hardware wallet. So this is something that will be possible.
Right. And also, I guess you could try and, let's say you're the merchant, you could try doing a pay join into your own hardware wallet potentially if you found a way to make the PSBT for that work also, right?
You can't, because like as when you want to do a pay join, the receiver always has to sign, so you need the keys in hot wallets. Yeah, so that's the problem.
I see. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean,
and even like because so PayJoin is very good if you really have a normal payment. If you're transferring between two wallets, like chain analysis can still kind of get information,
Figure it out and cluster that all together potentially. Yeah. And while we're on this whole idea of fingerprinting, right? So just for listeners who are a little bit newer, part of the aspect of privacy is trying to break certain heuristics and certain assumptions that are used by an external observer or potentially an observer with inside information. So let's say the chain surveillance company has KYC data from the exchange. And so there's information sharing going on. And so they would know, okay, Stefan Livera withdrew this amount from this exchange and it went to this address. And so we know that's his coin, that kind of thing. And so it gets into some of this aspect of how can these heuristics be broken? And so I think one of the important ones that Kukks, you were mentioning earlier was BIP69, which is in relation to the output ordering, correct? So the transactions have inputs and outputs, and then BIP69, I think it has some guidance on how to order those outputs. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that's working in with this?
Well, with the initial implementation I had done, it was I think it was just by default following BIP69, but Nicolas refactored it and made it randomize both inputs and outputs, if I remember correctly. And I think that was also some of the feedback from Adam Gibson on making sure it didn't kind of follow that standard.
The main problem, if we follow the standard, it means that any transaction that doesn't follow the standard are not PayJoin. So it would have been pretty bad. So yeah, that's why I removed it.
So that's a specific fingerprint on its own. So
yeah, and that, I guess that's part of the broader difficulty around coordination, right? So I think on the whole, like, I think this is a great step forward in terms of people being able to use PayJoin, but we have to sort of understand as well that there are limitations there, and that coordinating cross wallet can be sort of difficult. And as long as there's one leak somewhere, then it can be sort of fingerprinted in a way, and they can say, "Oh, look, see, I think that's a wallet A type of transaction," or "No, that's wallet B," because they did some other flagging or they did some different end sequence number, right?
Yeah, so there is so when we implemented PayJoin, as I said, there has been lots of fingerprinting things that have been reported in the BTC Pay server wallet, and I start wondering like how Wasabi Wallet was doing, and I think Wasabi Wallet has the right approach. So most of people are trying to concentrate on how do we do for making all wallet behaving like they are the same. But it's not really possible because you cannot coordinate between people and different wallets to force this kind of behavior. However, what you can do, and it's what Wasabi Wallet is doing, and I think it's a pretty great idea that I will also implement in BTC Pay, is to randomize your fingerprints. So basically, the basic idea is that you check on the blockchain like all the different fingerprinting way of all the different transactions. You create a statistic on this. Then when you need to create a new transaction, you say, okay, maybe 50% of the transaction have lock time 0. And so 50% of the time you create a transaction that has the lock time 0. And so by doing this, basically you don't hope that all wallets do the same. You don't really care. You just adapt automatically to what majority of the network is doing. And I think it's a right approach to this. And there is also another thing that I'm interested in is what I call fingerprint poisoning. So all those different heuristics are very well known, and we know that chain analysis are like following that. So if you know that, it means that you can trick them by using those heuristics to draw them in the wrong conclusion. So one of the PayJoin idea, for example, is that imagine that in your wallet you have very small amount of change. So having a very small coin inside your wallet can happen in several ways. So one of the ways that chain analysis very often send very little amount of Bitcoin to your wallet, like for example 500 Satoshi. And when you receive this coin, if you make the mistake to spend this coin along with another of your coin, then chain analysis know that this other coin belongs to you. So the idea is with like fingerprinting poisoning is, okay, what if we allow this user to make a pay join transaction with this small 500 Satoshi? And if they send this 500 Satoshi to another developer or to another service that support pay join, the service will like mix its own inputs. And like now the chain analysis will say, oh, this other input like belongs to the same wallet, but it's not the case. Actually, it's belonging to the person, to another person. So it's kind of like a way to trick them. There is other way, like for example, chain analysis very often when you have a transaction with two outputs, if there is one output that have a round number, so for example 0.1 Bitcoin, they think that it's the payments, and the other one is the changer. So like if you know this, you can take advantage of this heuristic to reverse it, where the change has a round amount. So we are doing already that, and the basic idea is that they cannot really know who is doing pay join. They cannot really know how many people do pay join, but nevertheless, there is always this little doubt that all their analysis is poisoned, and it might be enough to prevent them from using their data in a productive manner.
Yep. Kukks, did you have anything to add in terms of that whole discussion around fingerprinting?
No, I mean, makes sense as well. And even once we add batch transactions being bundled inside the pay join itself, it's gonna be more than, it actually becomes more than just a two-party coin join, right? You can have, I mean, you can batch like 5 transactions in one, and you'll send, you'll all of a sudden you have a 5-party coin join happening in a pay join. So at that point, you can't really say that wallet A and wallet B are they're different and that you can't trust it or something, or that it's a pay join because of it. So
yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, so I think just touching back to what you were saying, Nicolas, there around the drunk wallet or kind of randomized wallet, I think that's an interesting idea as well, because I think trying to align across all of these different wallets is just not feasible, right? Because as soon as one wallet updates, or as soon as one wallet tries to have a new feature, then boom, now they're not in alignment. And as soon and unless you can maintain perfect alignment and maintain it, it's just not a realistic way to proceed. So I think the approach there of the randomizing and putting different fingerprints is probably the right one. I think the other approach I've heard of is trying to mimic a well-known wallet. So things like mimicking Bitcoin Core or mimicking Electrum as an example as well.
Well, it's not also a good idea, because actually Bitcoin Core is maybe 10% of the transaction of the network. So even if maybe it's popular, it's not that much as well. So
right. Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah. I think trying to mimic another wallet is the same problem of trying to do everybody's the same. I think the best way is really to randomize those fingerprints and do it in a dynamic manner. So like right now, Wasabi Wallet, for example, hard-coded the probabilities of some of the fingerprints. I think it should be like, adaptive on the condition of the network. But yeah, I think it's a better approach.
That's the work. Yeah, that's the direction to go in. Okay. Okay. I think the other interesting one is around privacy in terms of perhaps who do we want privacy against, right? So it comes down to maybe the ideal privacy way of doing pay joins is between, let's say, end user, 2 end users, let's say. Whereas if one of those parties is a regulated party, then pay joining with that person might not necessarily give that much of a benefit, because, well, depending how things go, because that regulated party might have some kind of information sharing agreement with, say, chain surveillance, right? But what do you guys think? Do you guys agree, disagree? Does it make more sense from an end user to end user?
Always the thing is that with pay join, the information about what's happening is local. So it's not global. So even if you are doing a coin join with a regulated entity and this entity is sharing data with a chain analysis is not sharing this data with anybody else. So like it's still better than just having everybody in the whole network knowing what's going on. Like they have kind of siloed information, and they cannot really easily share with each other because it's their business model. If they share about it, then it's bad for them as well. So I think that even if you are pay joining with a regulated entity, it's still a benefit.
Yeah. And Kukks, did you have anything to add there, or do you feel similar?
I mean, I highly doubt that regulated entities are going to be offering PayJoin as well. In any case, I mean, it's too much effort on their end, and some companies can't even support SegWit, so I doubt they're going to go for PayJoin.
Yep. So it'll be sort of more like independent merchants and the self-sovereign user types who really want to use PayJoin.
Well, one thing I will really like to see, and I should try to ping it, exchanges doing it for deposit money. So it will be very nice if one exchange like allow PayJoin for deposits. But yeah, like Kukks said, I don't know if it's realistic or not. Maybe we can try to ask. We'll see.
Well, the other argument I have heard is that potentially, and there are different views I've heard in the Bitcoin world on this, that it can potentially save chain space by having a kind of a snowball accumulating UTXO that may potentially save Bitcoin on-chain space, and therefore exchanges could potentially try and offer that not from a privacy perspective, but from a chain efficiency perspective. What's your view there?
Yeah, that's correct. So right now, like the fees are kind of low, so it doesn't work. But imagine that fees become very expensive. It become very profitable to batch your UTXO consolidation with the PayJoin of people. So there can be a huge advantage of several dollars per transaction if fees start to rise. So yeah, that's a good point. And that's why also the protocol allows some flexibility to the receiver, because it also gives some so take for example a Lightning network. So when you are transacting on the Lightning network, everything is private between the two parties. There might be a theoretical way to know where the money goes, but it's so complicated that I'm pretty sure like no chain analysis company is doing that. So yeah, so even if from privacy perspective, Lightning Network is way better than PayJoin, like regulated entity will still support it. Why? Because like they can say, oh, it's not for privacy perspective, it's for the utility of sending payment for cheap. So I think it's an important point, yes. And later on, I don't know how it will go, because it still maybe, I still don't fully understand everything on this, but when we will have Schnorr signature into Bitcoin and we can aggregate signature into one, it might be even possible to make larger savings around this. So it will be interesting.
Yeah, and so I guess it might be, and the defense, let's say, of somebody who wants to enable PayJoin could just be, look, I'm not just doing it for privacy. It's also this saving of cost, and so therefore it is the cheapest way to do it. And also because of not just that most people will do it just because it will save them cost. And so then if a lot of people do it, then it kind of drives the incentive for a lot of people to use PayJoin, which in turn helps break the common input ownership heuristic, which is what people were trying to break all at the start, right? Which brings it back to what were we doing this for, right? So yeah, did you have anything to add on that idea, Kukks, or shall we?
No, it's completely correct, though.
Yeah.
So, one of the things also that we plan on doing in the next release of BTC Pay will be the refund, a refund mechanism for merchants, easier refund mechanism. And actually, we want to try to plug that to PayJoin. So think about, imagine that a merchant want to emit a refund. What will happen is that it will give a link to the user, and the user will go to this link and put his own address to receive the refund. And what will happen is that in the database we'll save, okay, this customer ask for a refund of this amount and put it somewhere in the wallet interface of the merchant. And imagine that you have like 10 customers doing this kind of requests. Like what will happen is that until the merchant so we will require the merchant to accept it. And when it accepts, we will allow him to say, okay, do it in the next page on transaction. So when the next page on comes in, then all those refunds will be bundled inside it. And like you make even worse of a mess for analysis on this.
Right. And it's more chain efficient too, right?
And it's even more chain efficient. It's finally a way of doing batching in a user-friendly way, I think.
Yeah, I guess just for listeners who are maybe you're a little bit newer, you're not clear what we're talking about there. The idea is in Bitcoin transactions, you are generally charged based how many, like we quote it normally, how many Satoshis per byte, right? And so the idea is normally in each transaction, the thing that drives the size of it is the number of UTXOs, the pieces of Bitcoin. And so what you're getting at there is that because you're aggregating across, let's say 10 pieces of Bitcoin, the signature data and all those other bits of data, you're sort of amortizing that cost and spreading it. And so that's where we're talking about you're getting a chain efficiency benefit because you're basically you're taking up less bytes on Bitcoin's blockchain. And that's the saving, just for listeners who are a bit newer. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other new features. I noticed you've got coin selection now in the BTC Pay wallet. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe Kukks.
Yeah, sure. I think it was actually quite a simple thing to do because there's so much support in Bitcoin to do it and NB Explorer and all our services already. So it was really just a UI thing. We just never exposed it, I think. But Nicolas did all the work like maybe over a year ago for this stuff. So I just plugged it in the UI and worked out pretty nice. We also had labeling for the coin selection, so it was already in BTC Pay. It was just not widely used. I think it was just something to list in the transactions that you receive, so you can label them before. So that came out nice. So now when you go spend a pay join or something, you can actually use the wallet, toggle coin selection, and say you want to send only transactions that came from an invoice or multiple invoices. So that's great as well in terms of a merchant using the same wallet from incoming funds versus his exchange funds or whatever, in case he doesn't want to expose specific data to a merchant.
Yeah, and speaking of exposure as well, I think that just reminded me as well this idea of the probing attack, right? So when you do a pay join, there's that coordination, and one party is showing the other, hey, here's one of my UTXOs. So Kukks, I understand you've got there's some coding in there in BTC Pay around showing just the same one and not kind of showing all the different UTXOs.
Well, initially it was showing just the same one. Actually, it was, let me see how that was. That was actually, so somebody does a request a pay join, so they send you a transaction. You grab a UTXO based on some model. We try to focus on using some heuristics that I think Laurent had written down in a gist somewhere. But we only prioritize by that. If we don't find something that matches pretty good in terms of that, we grab one by deterministically. I think Nicolas did that part. So we grab one based on the type of transaction that is being presented, if I remember correctly. And we return that. And if somebody runs away with that UTXO, it's still in the next attempt, because of because of how the UTXO is selected. I think Nicolas can expand on this a bit better.
So basically, like the basic of the probing attack is that somebody sends you a normal transaction. So you reply with a page on transaction. By replying with a page on transaction, you are exposing one of your inputs. But then the person that created this request can decide to broadcast the original transaction, making the page join like invalid. But at the end of the day, it means that this party learned about one of your inputs. So it's kind of somebody that is targeting you can easily found out your UTXO, and so we cannot really prevent that 100%, but we can make it more difficult for them to achieve this. And the way we do this is if we detect that the original transaction got broadcasted and rendered the page on invalid, the input that was used for this page on will be reused in priority for the next time. However, it's not 100% sure, because if it was 100% sure, then it means that you have a notification mechanism that the attacker can use to know who is the next person that paid you. So it's but we're still in priority. So yeah, we cannot prevent it 100%. You know, like if the attacker like creates 10,000 invoice in 1 second, try to DDoS you and doing this, then you will learn all your UTXO. There is no way to prevent that 100%. But we still, it need to be targeted. And if you do that, is spending money on fees. So and like if lots of merchant is doing it, like you don't gain lots of information on the network in general. And even if you gain this information, as an attack, it's only the attacker that know. It's not the whole network, so it's still better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And I guess just with coin selection and labeling, that's also interesting. If you are a merchant who is more privacy conscious, you might say, "Oh, this came from a KYC exchange," and you might label those. Okay, or this just came from customers and so on, and you might tag them and use them in a way that you see fit. And there's some other features as well. So there's a new API. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that and what's the direction that you're going for with that?
Yeah, sure. You want to go? Okay. Yeah, it's so it's still quite early. We only have maybe 3 APIs so far, which is you can register a new user and you can create or edit a store, just the name actually for now. But the basics is there, so we can expand upon everything in the UI. So the idea is that anything you can do through the UI, you can do through the API, and maybe even more, honestly, because we have a lot of features inside the BTC Pay that we don't completely expose in the UI. So that should be interesting as well to see what people can come up with. The way I'm going to be testing the API to see if it's like useful is I think I'm going to be developing a relatively small app, like cross-platform, so you can use BTC Pay as a wallet on your phone or as a desktop application to manage as a merchant. So that's how I'll be testing all the API stuff I'll be working on. We'll be working.
The transmitter, I guess that will.
Yeah, as well. Since we also have the third party, we have a plugin called Btc Transmuter that connects to BTC Pay. We can also just hook it up to all the new API stuff that's available, so you can trigger anything on the UI basically on it. Like for example, we have full interoperability with all the Lightning nodes inside BTC Pay. Like you can tell it to open channels or pay Lightning invoices if we wanted it to, but we never exposed it. So actually with Transmuter you can already do that, but I don't advertise it much because I haven't tested it that much yet. But it would be nice to actually build all these things inside a nice UI or a separate application that uses BTC Pay under the hood.
Yeah, one of the things that we plan on doing in this API as well, as he's mentioned, is that so in Lightning you have like 5 different implementation or something like this. There is Eclair, LND, C Lightning, Peter Megan, like whatever. Like it's growing with time. And the thing is that all those different implementation have their own specific feature, but there is a core feature that everybody has, which is create an invoice, pay it, connect to a peer, and create a channel. You know, like whatever implementation you are doing, they all do these core features. So in BTC Pay, we already did the work to abstract all of this. So like basically in our code, there is no condition if LND do this, if C Lightning do that. We don't do that at all. We have a common interface, a common abstraction, where whatever the implementation is, we just create the invoice, send a payment, or like do this kind of operation of normal Lightning network. So this we will expose this API. So it means that people that will integrate with this and that only need those common feature of Lightning Network will be able to support all different implementations of Lightning Network and add it to their app, and it would just work.
Awesome. So yeah, so it can make it a little bit easier in terms of people who want to code up their additional feature. They don't have to think about, oh, what does LND, how does LND say this? How does C Lightning say this? How does Electrum say this, or whatever else? It's kind of all part of the one thing. And there is also BTC Pay Vault. So did you want to just tell us a little bit about that, and where is that at this point?
Yeah, so BTC Pay, so it's a feature we added like maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago, so it's not very new, but for a long time, BTC Pay Server was only supporting, how it's called? Ledger wallets. And so Ledger Wallet was implemented via, it's technical detail, but via U2F protocol. And U2F protocol normally it's used for authentication. It's like when you plug in, when you try to log to your Google accounts, you can use like a key like this, plug your USB key like this, and then click on the button to authenticate you. So it's like a two-factor authentication. And basically Ledger Wallet, for example, was hacking this protocol to transmit data to their hardware wallet, which was a great idea. The problem with this is that Microsoft, with an update, like completely broke it. Because now every time you send a message to this device, there is a pop-up that is coming up on Windows. And this pop-up basically makes the process so slow that it completely broke the integration. Like for signing a transaction, you will need to wait 5 minutes in front of your computer while a pop-up like go up and down, and like you could not click anywhere, so it was a disaster. There was also WebUSB, but WebUSB like don't work. Like depending of if you are on Linux or Windows or Mac, like there is shit that's going on, so we completely stopped using it. So the idea was, how can we do this? How can we support any wallet in a way that we are sure that nobody will broke? And there's been like Andrew Chow that is doing this. So Andrew Chow that created PSBT, actually, one of the reasons he created PSBT was to create a sort of abstraction over hardware wallets. And on top of PSBT, he created this project that is called HWI project. It's a command line. It's a command line application that allow you to always use the same interface with PSBT to sign your transaction, whatever the wallet you're plugging to your computer. But problem is that it's a command line application, so normal people don't use it. So what we created is it's called a BTC Pay Vault. So BTC Pay Vault is a desktop application that you run, and this desktop application under the hood is basically using this HWI utility developed by Andrew Chow. And what this application is also doing is opening a communication channel that your browser can talk with. So basically what's happening is that you open BTC Pay Server Vault, then in BTC Pay, in your BTC Pay Server website, you can say, okay, I want to sign with your hardware wallet. And from the JavaScript of your browser, we will communicate with the BTC Pay Server Vault. And basically we can sign any transaction of any hardware wallet supporting the HWI that are supported by HWI. So it has been a huge step in usability of hardware wallets. Now you can use any hardware wallet you want, and it just works. There's never any problems on this. Yeah, it has been awesome. It's working very well.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind as well that you can also use other applications with the BTC Pay Vault, because it's just an API, right? So you just need some JavaScript.
Yep.
So you can build your own app, and you can just connect to BTC Pay Vaults for hardware wallets, signing and fetching, configuring wallets and whatever.
Yes. So yeah, like you said, it's open to any website that want to integrate with it. They can do quite easily. an important point as well is that this work of hardware wallet integration is done basically by Andrew Chow. So he's doing all the integration of all hardware wallets. And I hope that we will find a new, by making HWI used more and more, I hope it will reverse the tendency where new hardware wallet maker will integrate themselves to HWI because they want to be supported by a bunch of services that only support HWI. And it will be great because hardware wallet maker in general are not software developer. So it's better if they can just concentrate on doing the hardware and then just do this small kind of integration, and then they can just integrate to any application that support HWI. And I think it's a great idea, and it's Andrew Cho that worked to reach this point today, and it took lots of time, and I think it's finally starting to get the benefit of this approach right now.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to use BTC Pay Vault. I actually will have a look at it next after this. But in terms of using it, are you able to? Is it able to just ingest the XPub out of, like, when you plug it into your computer, and then it does the lookup against its full node, and then says, okay, this is your balance, these are your transactions, and then you're able to do that?
The idea is that when you create a new store on BTC Pay server, like, you need to say, okay, where the money goes. So, and in the option you say, okay, use the BTC Pay Vault. And so if you choose this, the BTC Pay Vault will just show you a pop-up to know that, to ask you, do you really want to expose this kind of data to this website? So if you click yes, then the BTC Pay fetch the XPub directly from your hardware wallet, and then populates all the data that is needed for the integration to work. So it's the user experience is way better than saying to the user, oh, if you before that we would say to the user, if you have Ledger, you need to open Ledger Live to go to this tab to copy paste this data and to put it there, and it was very complicated. Now it's just like start the vault, and that's it.
Yeah. You can if you wanted to compare the vault to something, it would be Trezor has a dedicated app as well that you run on your computer. I think it's called Trezor Bridge, and it works almost exactly the same way, except that Trezor Bridge only handles Trezor, obviously.
Right, yes. And so this works cross wallets.
Yeah, and this Trezor Bridge don't allow any other application than the wallet Trezor.io to access.
You can
them.
only
So
you can only
we cannot use it.
Yeah, you can only use it with Trezor.io. So.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Are there any other tips that you guys have for merchants out there? So let's say a merchant is listening and they want to use BTC Pay, or they are using BTC Pay. Have you got any tips for them in terms of what to do, how to do it with?
Well, like we are more interested in the reverse, the feedback that they can get, like what kind of problem we can solve for them. I think the next big problem that we can solve for them is the refund UX flow. So also I'd like, so if you are a merchant Bitcoiner, and I would like that you start allowing pay join, and that you advertise it, so that we can retweet this, and I guess you will have like interested user that won't just buy something just for the fact that they will mix their UTXOs. So it would be pretty great.
Awesome. Kukks, anything from you that you would like BTC Pay users to know?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of questions sometimes about the conversion to fiat and whatever. So we also have plugins, Btc Transmuter and all those similar things. We also have the configurator actually that you can use to either edit your existing deployment in BTC Pay, or configure exchanges to transfer your incoming Bitcoin to market sell or trade. I'm always looking for feedback on that as well. So it's always the reverse kind of thing. But if you want these kind of features, they are available. They just need I just need feedback from people to refine them.
Excellent. And look, just for the last question, we're obviously coming up to the halving very soon, right? So we're recording this 10th of May 2020. And we've got the halving coming up in 2 days or whatever. So have you guys got any reflections or any thoughts on the halving and what's coming in this next epoch?
Well, on my side, given how Bitcoin is unpredictable, I have no fucking clue of what's going on. So from so this halving every 4 years, like I was used to think that it was a technical mistake from Satoshi. I think it should have been, more gradual. But at the end of the day, like it's kind of a social event as well. It's like it's pumpastic. So it's like, okay, it's every 4 years. It could have been better on the technical plan, but it's always like the occasion for the Bitcoin community to celebrate and make some noise about it. So it's not that bad.
And Kukks?
Yeah, I mean, as long as for me, I kind of enjoyed the bear market. I got to get more technical and work without having to worry about people. You lost my money or something. So it's kind of nice. I'm excited to see what happens now.
Awesome, guys. So look, listeners, make sure you check out BTC Pay. Let me just put this up on screen share. So this is the website, btcpayserver.org. Go and sign up, go and use it. I use it myself on my own personal website, and on Ministry of Nodes, we use BTC Pay Server. And obviously follow the guys. So Nicolas, he is on Twitter at Nicolas Dorier, and Kukks is on Twitter at Mr. Kukks. Anywhere else that you would like the guys to find you online, or that's pretty much it?
So another place where you can find us is on chat.btcpayserver.org. So like it's where the community is hanging around, and like if you have problem, you come here. We always check at least once a day. Like there is several of us to reply to questions, so it would be great. And also, Stefan, did you activated PayJoin for your donation page?
I have. I just did. Yes.
Okay, good to know.
I did. So I've got a little widget there. So that's actually a good tip as well, because one thing I asked Nicolas himself. One thing, if you already run BTC Pay, it's a good way that you can help your friend who wants to take donations. You can just get them to set up an account on your BTC Pay, and I've done that for other people. So I've done that for other people in the Bitcoin community. I won't name them just to not dox them, but they kind of piggybacking off my BTC Pay. So that's something you can do if you are, let's say, you're a Bitcoin advocate and you want to use it and you want to help other people. Then this is another way you can help your friends get started with accepting Bitcoin into their shop, because you're helping them just piggyback off your instance. So that's probably the final tip. But look, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me. Listeners, you can find me online at Stefan Livera, and subscribe at stefanlivera.com, and subscribe on YouTube. That's it, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.